I want to thank everyone for celebrating our posts. It has been a long, difficult journey getting to this place. Not necessarily physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. I have resisted pursuing accreditation, mainly because of I did not want to do anything that would jeopardize the freedom that I'm able to give students to be who God has created them to be, to learn in the way they were created to learn. And I saw accreditation as a possible hindrance to that. Um, Many of you know that I have a strong love for the Sudbury model, probably more than any philosophy. And I have seen so many, and this is not me trying to convince you that it is better than every other philosophy out there, but it has been a blessing to my life, a blessing to my family. And and I have wanted to be able to give this model in its purest sense to any child that comes to the school. I realized probably about a year and a half ago that, well, probably almost 2 years ago, that um, implementing the Sudbury model in its purest sense was probably not going to happen, just because that there's just so much that the African American community goes through to just be in America as a people. There's just so much nervousness and fear about that type of freedom because of our need to be um, either right where we need to be academically or most times better so that we can even get anywhere in this country. There's not a lot of grace given to Black people in America, whether it be going to college, getting a job, or what have you. And so to prepare our children for this type of inequity, um, I realized that doing the Sudbury in its purest sense would probably not happen because of that fear of what if they don't get what they need in time, what if they don't get this skill, that skill. So I had to be sensitive um, to that, and that's what I consider to be culturally relevant teaching. And so what I did was I began to connect the Sudbury model with or implement the Sudbury model. They're not connected at all, but implement both the Sudbury model and classical education. I chose classical education because of its focus on giving its students building blocks. So learning Latin is not just to learn a foreign language, but it teaches them vocabulary, which builds on that knowledge so they can learn how to sound out words. Their view of reading classics is important because it kind of gives them a cultural literacy, and then you can connect that with reading other culturally relevant texts, but there's always that coming back to reading classic texts. And I don't want this video to be about explaining my philosophy, but just giving you that little background. So I became at peace with that. And I decided to focus on it. And me, along with a few other parents, actually decided that we would be okay if the school itself had this hybrid where it's half Sudbury, half classical. But in our personal lives, in our homes, and how we handle our children, we would be as Sudbury as we possibly can. And what that looked like is I don't look at my children's grades. I don't check up on their work. They're completely free to do what they want. And I have several other parents who just kind of have dropped their kids off in the school and they're just like whatever happens happens, and we have found that our children actually progress and are progressing pretty quickly and following their path and pursuing their goals and gaining what they need to be, but that's just a small minority of us who have been freed from that anxiety. And so, and that is working. The fact that parents have been able to opt out of having grades and opt out of having someone, being so hard on their child about being behind or not finishing work or not going to, that kind of thing, has worked for us. And so here we have this school. And we have found that everybody is progressing very well in the school. So once I was able to think about that, I began to write about it and just kind of put it kind of in a package. And especially as we went online in order to give the vision of how our school functions to our parents who would now be helping us run it from their homes, we wrote this document, our manual for at-home learning as a as a Living Water family. And and then that made me realize, hey, if I'm able to really write this down in this way that parents can understand, maybe this is something that can be packaged and put in an accreditation paperwork. So we pursued accreditation with Middle States. And so we passed the first application. I submitted some information and they said, oh, okay, that looks like you would be good for candidacy. Now you have to apply for candidacy. And they gave me this big, thick packet that I had to fill out. And it took me about 2 months to fill it out. And I'm filling it out and I'm able to really fill it out pretty well. And it's going simply. And I'm nervous though, because I kept emailing them like, we don't have this. We're not elaborate. Like, it's very simple. I was very clear about our implementation of the Sudbury model. And they seemed pretty open to what we were doing as long as we could document it and show what we were doing and what performance looked like. And so then, but then we got to this roadblock in the paperwork that had us talking about governance. And that stopped me in my tracks because they were like, what's your board? Who makes the final decisions? Who's your governing body? And all that stuff. And we don't have any of that. And so I stopped filling out the paperwork for a while. And I remember getting an email, are you coming? Are you going to still apply for candidacy? But I didn't answer those emails. I just was like, I'm just trying to, for a while, I said, I don't think we can answer this because I'm not giving this up because our governance process is based solely on the Sudbury model. So even though I'm the founder and people would call me the head of school, I always correct them. I said, no, I'm a staff member. I just founded the school, but it's definitely an equal partnership in running the school. And so then I feel after so much prayer, the Lord gave me an idea. I decided to explain how the Sudbury model works, the assembly, the school meeting, and the justice committee. And I put that in governance, took a deep breath and finished all the rest of the paperwork and sent that in. They said, oh, this looks great. We think I just wish, the guy was like, I wish I could visit your school. So that was exciting. And then he said, we'd like to invite you to a candidacy meeting based on the paperwork you submitted. And if that goes well, we will officially award you candidacy for accreditation. And what candidacy for accreditation means is that they have looked at all my paperwork and they basically see that we are a school, we are a legit school that's offering a quality education. And now for documentation's sake, we have to write this report like a dissertation on the school that shows really detailed research and information. It's called the self-study on the nuts and bolts of the school and submit that. And so one of the things though that was really cool about our candidacy meeting was I made the decision, and I didn't tell them I was going to do this because I didn't want anyone to stop me, was I invited a parent and a student, along with the staff, of course, they had to come anyway, to this meeting. And so he goes through our paperwork and everything else checks out, and then we get to the governance part. It was called the school leadership part. And for my school leadership, he said, we want to talk to your school leaders. My school leaders were a 9-year-old little girl and a parent, a beautiful single mom of 2 beautiful little girls who works really hard to take care of her babies. And she's a blessing to us. I didn't invite her. She volunteered. I asked parents who wanted to come, and she volunteered to come to the meeting. And so I get to the governance part, and I said, well, I know this is going to be a little unorthodox, but I wanted you to see our school leaders are our students, our parents, and the staff. And he said, oh, okay. I said, so I'd like little Zayana to speak first. And Zayana explained how democracy is played out in our school through the school meeting and the JC so beautifully that the man says, how old are you? And she's the clerk. She is the leader of our justice committee. And even though the justice committee, which is made up of 6 students and 1 staff member, has high school students on it, but she's the leader of it. And then I had the parent talk about how our assemblies work. And she explained how I do not make decisions without first talking things out with them. And I love this part where she said to them, she said, actually, Miss Anika actually first asks the students what they think about things before she makes a decision. And after she gets the students' input, she then comes to the parents. Long story short, they just both together explained how governance works in our school. And so here we are. We were, after that meeting, and it was so funny to watch the man go from being really serious and structured to, by the time we got to the end of that long 2-hour meeting, he said, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to tell, I'm going to recommend you for candidacy. He said, it's just, you all have a good school. It's a quality school. I'm just going to do it. And he's the vice president of accreditation. And to get those words, even before we got the official letter, it brought me to tears. And so, and we got the official letter. I waited to get that official letter because I was still in a place of doubt. Like, what if somebody sees what we did and how we do things? And his boss is like, no, we can't do that. But they all awarded us candidacy. So what does candidacy mean? It means that for the next 10 to 18 months, I will be working on basically a dissertation, almost a research project on all the nuts and bolts of our school, which will yield a very thick hundreds of pages of documentation of who the Living Water School is. The beauty about Middle States is they don't give me, it's not standardized the way a lot of schools are. They have these benchmarks, these things that they want to see in our school, but they allow us to create our own plan. We don't even have to have traditional grades or grade levels. Just as long as we show how students progress from age 5 or whatever to graduation and then are released into the world as prepared young adults. And so it gave us a lot of flexibility. We also chose not to go with ACSI because it has a very standardized way of presenting Christian education. And our school is not standardized. It is a school that is Christian in environment. Um, we do share the scriptures with students. We do share the gospel, but it is done in a very loving, non judgmental way. And students opt to take Bible study if they want to grow in discipleship. Other than that, the students are just pretty free to believe as they want. Just to have to respect each other. They're also free to ask any questions. They're allowed to disagree. They're allowed to say they don't understand something or don't believe something. And we, with patience and love, talk through that if they want to. And so we felt like traditional ACSI tends to lean more toward the evangelical side of things. That's not us, and so we felt that that would not be a good fit for our school. So we really try to implement the really loving, gracious way Jesus related to people in the school, and we felt that Middle States will allow for us to have that freedom. So pray for us for this next 10 to 18 months as we do this research project on the Living Water School and continue this journey to full accreditation, international accreditation.